recording this. And by participating, you're giving your consent to being part of our webinar today. So just letting you know that. I think we're at time, so let's go ahead and get started. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Janet Edmonds. I work with Conservation International, and I sit in our Center for Communities and Conservation. And we are very proud to be part of the Africa Biodiversity Collaborative Group. And like I said, today we're going to be talking about the end product, one of our last deliverables for the Freshwater Wash Working Group. We've had this many years of collective thought process, implementation, advocacy, and now we're ready to show you our lessons learned in our final stage. So one of the best parts about ABCG is that we bring collective voices together. So I'm going to hand it over to Evelyn at the ABCG Secretariat to give us a little overview. And I'm going to move the presentation. Hopefully you can see it. Can you all see the presentation?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I have to get over to it, so give me a minute. Okay, can you see the title? You have to give me a verbal because I can't see you all now.
Yes, we can see it.
Yes, we can.
There you go, Evelyn. Over to you.
Okay.
Yeah, we can see that.
Great.
Okay. So thank you, Janet, and greetings, everyone. So let me just start by first thanking you all for finding time to join us for this event. As Janet mentioned, my name is Evelyn Namvuan. I am the Communications and Engagement Specialist for the Africa Biodiversity Collaborative Group. And I take this opportunity also to just welcome you all for the webinar where we will be launching our publication titled Translating Projects to Policies, Lessons Learned Applying the Freshwater Wash Advocacy Strategy Methodology in South Africa and Uganda. So I'll give a brief overview about ABCG. So the Africa Biodiversity Collaborative Group is a coalition of 7 conservation organizations. We are the Africa Wildlife Foundation, Conservation International, Jane Goodall Institute, the Nature Conservancy, Wildlife Conservation Society, World Resources Institute, and the World Wildlife Fund. And together we convene, collaborate, and co-create practical approaches in order to address emerging conservation challenges, inform policy, and integrate biodiversity into international development agendas across sub-Saharan Africa. And just a bit of today's webinar falls under one of the 6 key issues of this coalition, which is the global health linkages to conservation. And ABCG, how we work is that ABCG create innovative conservation solutions by 1, fostering collaborative and adaptive learning opportunities, generating and disseminating user-driven knowledge, and helping practitioners improve skill and replicate. So as I mentioned earlier, today's webinar falls under one of the 6 key issues of this coalition, that is the global health linkages to biodiversity conservation, specifically the task on freshwater conservation, water sanitation, and hygiene. So then just to the improvement of health and freshwater ecosystem is one of ABCG's key focus areas. And so we work to proactively engage diverse local community and actors in advocacy efforts for improved policy. So before I welcome the speakers, I just want to also note that we just from the ABCG Secretariat and the entire team just to appreciate the efforts of the Freshwater Wash Task Group members in South Africa, Uganda, and DC for their efforts in putting together this lessons learned report, and also the enthusiasm in sharing the knowledge and lessons learned, as Janet mentioned earlier, the culmination of many years of work. I would now like to welcome the Freshwater Task Lead who's coming after me, yeah, Colleen, and hand it back to Janet as well to take it over from here. Thanks.
Thank you, Evelyn. Thank you so much. As Evelyn said, my name is Colleen Sorto. I sit at Conservation International, and I coordinate this subtask looking at the intersections between freshwater conservation and WASH. In our report, you'll see it abbreviated as FW WASH a lot. Just add into the acronyms that all of us in the NGO sector can claim. As Evelyn said, we're looking at reducing watershed degradation and pollution by thinking about the health of people and ecosystems together. And this work is building on not only advocacy efforts, which is going to be the focus of today's lessons learned, as well as what the team from South Africa is joining to give us their perspectives on, but it's building on work that started first by looking at this intersection across different projects in sub-Saharan Africa, responding to a call for looking for more specific guidance as well as M&E indicators to say, like, what, you know, how do you put this project together and see those benefits? And then putting it into practice. In South Africa, Conservation South Africa led the piloting in the Mzimvubu. Over my shoulders is actually a lovely picture that Tando took of the mountains in Ngeni, which is one of the communities there where this work is happening. And in Uganda, the Jane Goodall Institute Uganda was pilot testing this work in the Bujongo-Bugomo corridor. And today we were going to, after they implemented for a while, they realized the element of scale, and really at that third piece of ABCG could really help them by looking at advocacy and thinking about how our policies, planning, or financing impacting the ability to take what we're finding as successful pilots on the ground and taking it up to reaching beyond and into communities that could also benefit from this integrated approach. So we worked with a WASH organization called IRC, and IRC brought their expertise in advocacy to help us design a methodology for putting this together. The team that participated in a very intense 4-day workshop to produce a draft advocacy strategy, which was then vetted with partners and put into practice for a year. And after a year, CI led a process of looking at lessons learned. And I think with that, I'm going to pass it to Janet, who is one of our co-authors on the report, to give us a high-level review. Oh, actually, before I go, just to say, we'll share the link at the end of the presentation, and in the report, you can find out some more details about both of the pilot projects, specifically that transition from fieldwork to policy, and then a little bit more detail on these 7 lessons learned that Janet's going to share with us. So with that, Janet, I'll pass it to you.
Great. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much, Evelyn, Colleen. And I just want to thank also in advance all of our colleagues in South Africa and Uganda, and also other members of the Africa Biodiversity Collaborative Group. We really have been so enriched over the last couple of years to work with such great colleagues, and we have learned so much. And when I kind of think back on, you know, the goal of this ABCG task was really to influence the water and development sector. And I do really feel like we have accomplished that in many ways. I think when we first started this, like 7, 8 years ago, not many organizations were really looking across that conservation, health, development gap and trying to bridge. And I do really think we've come very far. So it's due to all of our colleagues' hard work. And so getting into the lessons, for those of you who, you know, have known about our advocacy, the facilitator's guide, all that work, it won't surprise you that we really want advocacy to be like a straight line. This is what you do, here are the steps. But one of the first lessons that we discovered was that you really need to be flexible when you're implementing your advocacy strategy, and you can have the best plan and things can get in your way and things can pop up. And so really being able to adapt and being open to emerging opportunities is particularly important. And of course, in this year, which none of us could ever have seen coming with a pandemic and COVID-19, we really did have to adapt to plans that we had in place and how we had to really rise to the occasion and really meet the needs of the communities and the policymakers we were dealing with. Our second lesson, advocacy leads they're driving the process, and they really need to understand not just those formal structures, but also how stuff happens, how decisions get made, right? Who's talking to who's listening to who. And so that also really came through, and the real need for trusted relationships. Those are so key, right? Being able to have the trust of policymakers. So our third lesson, reaching our target audience and being able to really get their attention and to show them why our messages are important to them. It really requires very careful preparation. The framing of the messages and the pitch have to be culturally and country specific, and that really does require a deep knowledge and getting multiple perspectives as well. Our lesson 4 is one of the key parts, right, of advocacy is that you want to be data driven. You really want to be able to show why this is important to your policymakers. How are we going to impact water access, health, conservation? What are those real key information data points? And we found this to be particularly important. Lesson 5, again, following on that flexibility, there are moments in your advocacy plan where maybe you're at step 2 and you really actually are going to find yourself at step 5, and really the need to be able to respond quickly and be very flexible. That was something that came through, and I think the South Africa team can talk about this a little bit more when we turn it over to them. So. And then definitely, I think one of the key lessons we found is that we really need to be re-looking at our assumptions in our advocacy plan, re-looking at the messages and adjusting the activities and how we're really disseminating our messages and getting those across. That really has to be a living document. And this last lesson, of course, underscores pretty much all of our Africa Biodiversity Collaborative Group work, is that, we really need to be working with multi-sectoral partners. We really need to be spanning the, health, development, economic, all of those factors to bring together really successful conservation goals. So those are just the 7 lessons that are in the report. There's a lot more nuance and deeper information as you go into it. And I think, as Colleen said, the report is posted and you can definitely see we really owe so much to all of the contributors and the people who really built this work on the ground, particularly Ellen Walter and Vida from IRC, who helped us with the advocacy work and led us through that. And then, of course, the support of USAID and the Africa Bureau. We're greatly indebted to everyone, and we thank you. And unfortunately, Isabel, who was our lead author, wasn't able to join us today. But I am going to hand it over to, I think, Colleen, were you going to maybe say some words before we hand it over to our colleagues in South Africa?
I'm going to do an introduction and invite our colleagues, our team, who actually happen to be in this picture. So I'm actually going to introduce them in no preference order, but from left to right, because that's us, you can see them. Joining us today, we have Alice Bardlow-Zambodla, the Eastern Cape Landscape Director from Conservation South Africa, working in the Mzimvubu. Next to her in the middle is Caroline Rose. She's the Senior Health and Restoration Manager for Conservation South Africa. And on the very edge of the photo, we have Tando Msomi, who's the the Municipal Extension Coordinator. And Alice, Carolyn, and Tando all participated in the design of this strategy and were, I guess, kind of the boots on the ground to the implementation. And so I have a couple questions to get things started and to share their reflections, but I can imagine as well with that introduction to the lessons, we'll open up the floor to give opportunity for others to ask some specific questions. Janet hinted at how this team had to be really adaptable and responsive once they found themselves doing this in the middle of a pandemic. And I imagine we'll get into that. But I just wanted to start first with, I think, Tando. Can you tell us what the advocacy strategy goal was, and did you achieve it? We sure heard you learned a lot, but what did you try to do, and do you feel like you met your measures of success?
Hi, Colleen. It's Caroline. I'll take that question.
Perfect.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. The goal that we set for the area that we're working in was really focused around the Alfred Nzo District Municipality Infrastructure Department. And our goal was around this department institutionalizing a coordinated and integrated planning process for water resources by 2020. So effectively, we actually have a little bit of time left according to the goal, but yeah, that was really where we were heading with it.
And did you achieve it?
Colleen, that's yes and no, I think would probably be the honest answer there. I think.
Tell me a little bit about the yes and a little bit about the no.
Yeah, I think in the sense that the option, the information that came with the impact that came with the COVID pandemic really put a big focus and a spotlight on water resource and water access. And in these areas, water access is not available or equitable for everybody. So with that increased focus on the municipality as the water service provider, it gave us great leverage points and sharpened their responses and created opportunities for us to collaborate and to work together and to kind of not maneuver, but kind of just create opportunities for them to take. So where we were successful was that finances, material resources, personnel and local skills have been made available through the ANDM. And this has enabled Conservation South Africa and stakeholders, community stakeholders, to work together to participate in a more integrated system that has enabled water access on the ground. When I say no, it's more that this has not been institutionalized in terms of a policy change, but effectively the municipality has started to adopt these strategies and approaches that we work together with them on, and they've started to initiate themselves in their own way without us. So in that sense, it does seem that it has gained a lot of traction. The idea of a more integrated process has gained traction and is starting to grow legs. We're optimistic.
Well, and I think that speaks to kind of those lessons when I was talking about being adaptable, being adjusted, being ready to implement in the moment, but then also with that multi-sectoral partnership, really listening to what's the reality of ANDM, what do they need, and how quickly can they adapt? I mean, I believe you said your goal was to see it by 2022, and even then that was ambitious to see a government make a change that quickly. I believe they're maybe not as agile as us NGO folks.
Absolutely not, no. And I think, sorry to jump in there, Colleen. I think it's, we've been able to make the most of the, through the strategy and through familiarizing key people within the municipality and using leverage points in a sense through, kind of personal contact through key people in that space. We really have been able to make bigger strides than I think we possibly anticipated, and it has had really fruitful results for people on the ground.
Okay, so with that in mind, Caroline, and I also invite Tando and Alice, if you're not feeling too shy, to turn on your cameras and join us. You just touched on sort of knowing the roles of the partners in ANDM who you're working with, but can you share with me a little bit about your roles and the different roles of the three of you played in implementing this strategy? And Caroline, it appears your colleagues are being shy. Oh, here they come. There you are. Hello. Molwene.
Hi, can you see me?
There we are. Yes, sir.
I hope my head doesn't intimidate you.
Not at all.
Here we are.
Tell us about this fabulous team and how it worked together, and maybe a little bit even why you needed the different functions that each of you played.
Okay, just to begin with, as my title explains, I'm more on the ground, working closely with the municipality itself. And given the history that we have with the municipality, I think we've gained a lot of trust from them, together with the communities. I'm the one who's pretty much liaising between the municipality, the communities, and CSA itself. And then I guess MAA, and we call her MAA. I think perhaps she will add to that. They are supporting me on this event, providing more on the background support in this hold, because I mean they are not that much familiar with the terrain. Yes. In terms of the the second question to that is that, like I said, we've got this relationship. I mean, our history with the municipality has been a good one. We've been on the positive side ever since we started. The reason why perhaps it works so well is because it's always been, we've always been having a good relationship whereby we're not expecting anything from them, but we're just working alongside with them. And it's only now that we've come to knock at their door and say, could you please assist us with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? And because of the good history and reputation that CSA had in the past, and it wasn't that difficult for them to know we're speaking the same language as they are speaking, apart from the fact that they are a water service authority, when we came to them to say, let's assist each other in the field that they are already providing. And then also, is that not only them that we have a good history, but the communities. We work too closely with the councillors, with the traditional authority, who happen to sit in these engagements. So that good relationship on the field as well as stationary, it happens to balance and put where we are right now. I think my colleagues perhaps would add.
Mama A or Caroline, maybe a little bit about your function in the strategy and assisting Tando in that very important point of relationships matter, and it's not starting from zero, but building on.
I'll just add a little bit. Caroline and I have played very much kind of like cheerleader and support and advice in this. Firstly, because Caroline is not in the landscape all the time, and I'm in the landscape on and off. So Tando is the constant. But what we've done is to try and create an enabling and a supporting environment. And working with ANDM, much as we have some really good established relationships there, we also know that it's kind of quite a highly politicized environment, and there's an element of protocol. So sometimes one has had to step up and step into the gap and go with Tando to meet certain people, and for people to who may not have much idea about what it is that needs to happen, or what has been what needs to be done, because some of them are political appointments, to be able to kind of bring them up to speed, but also to give them that recognition that they're more senior people. So I've basically played that enabling role and being able to go sometimes and to help to just add weight to the situation as the landscape director. But by the time I joined the organization, Tando had already established some really good relationships there and new people, and he knows his way in and out of that space. I often actually consult with him first before we make whatever moves need to be made, because he understands the protocol, the processes, and he knows who's who.
So it sounds like even though there were moments of shared strategy and efforts together, trusting Tando as the navigator was a big part of this effort being successful. Not just his internal knowledge, but those relationships and kind of, you said constant, but I would say almost spokesman, of trusting him as the spokesman, and then he knows when your participation would add weight, as you said, and kind of maybe even open doors or start a new part of the conversation, but that he constantly had his eye on the course that the strategy was going. Is that fair to say?
That is true.
Good. Caroline, anything you'd like to add to that point? I do have one more question before I give others the chance to.
No, nothing from me to add. Yeah, I've been very much the cheerleader in the background from Johannesburg. So.
But checking in on, this is where we started and where we are, and are we still there? No, like to that point of, the strategy had to adjust, because correct me if I'm wrong, but you didn't sort of land exactly where you started.
No, we didn't. And effectively, we waited a long time before we got a go-ahead to actually move forward with this, due to the nature of the protocol and the processes that we were anticipating to participate in to get to where we needed to. And we got that go-ahead the day before the countrywide lockdown last year. So the timing was challenging, to say the least, and there was an element of urgency to participate in that, which Tando very ably did, but Mama A was not available, was due to be part of that, but was not available due to traveling and things. So we've had to manipulate and move around, maneuver to achieve what we have so far.
Very interesting. Before I give it, so others, if you have questions, please feel free to type them in the chat. If not, I'll mute myself in a moment and give you a chance to ask. But one last question I have for the three of you is, you've already sort of hinted. Oh, I'm sorry, Mama A, please.
No, I just kind of wanted to add one thing. I know Tando's kind of talked about the fact that we've got good relationships and so on and so forth. What he didn't say implicitly, which I think has also helped us, is that we have an existing MOU with ANDM. So we've had an MOU over a long period of time, which basically speaks to us working together, collaborating, and so on and so forth. And that was also very helpful when you start talking in new spaces. You tell them we have an existing MOU, and there's a lot of very good work that was done prior to this around, vulnerability assessments and so on for the district, municipality, and natural resource management projects and so on and so forth. So all of these kind of laid a foundation, and we're not unknown. We are known to do good work, and we have a formal relationship.
So it sounds like already, because my next question is kind of, what are your tips or tricks or maybe points that weren't captured in the report for others who take this on? And I'm already going to say you started with, know who you are and where your relationships are, because it seemed like that was critical for you to build from a place of trust. But do you have any other kind of pointers for others who might be thinking about taking this methodology on and giving it a try in the context where they're working? Is there maybe a lesson that's not captured in the report, or something that you're like, man, I wish someone had told me this in Durban when we were putting the strategy together? And you can say that there was a pandemic about to come, but that's a cheating answer. So something you wish you had known maybe before you embarked on this journey.
Yes, Colleen. One was mentioned earlier by Janet. I think can emphasize the issue of flexibility, that you have to be flexible. We took an advantage of an opportunity here that arose, the issue of pandemic, where we looked at it and say, okay, they are providing water to communities, and we are also dealing with the springs and all. Let's take this opportunity, and it played very well. It's just like a very good marriage. And then we took that opportunity and it worked. So that being said, there are also some of the issues that we need to mention here. One of them being the fact that you're working with the government institution, and they are working in a very large system and with a very big budget. So you coming from a village perspective, they're dealing with 4 municipalities and wards and small villages. You got to be patient, and when you're working with them, because if you want them to get involved in what you are doing, be patient, because it takes a bit of time for them to see what you are doing. Be patient and know that you know which button to press and when. You must also be in a position. We were in an advantage position as well, because I'm an ex-municipal employee. So I understand the works of how it works inside the municipalities and the protocols. Also the fact that because we've been there long enough, so we know certain individuals personally and professionally, and we've been rubbing shoulders with them. So it was pretty much easy for us to enter into into this agreement. And also, one of the things that you must understand that we can assist maybe our colleagues is that things don't always follow a particular process. If you remember in the strategy, there's a chronological order, what must be done, then down until you get to a point. Yes, the institutional one, yes, you get to a presentation, but after that, it can follow any order. Sometimes you just get into having, there's money, boom, do 1, 2, 3. We've jumped all the steps that you expected to jump, because sometimes there are certain circumstances where different people act differently internally. So it didn't follow exactly the order that was prescribed in the strategy. And also the issue of relationships, we cannot overemphasize that one, working together with the people on the ground, the traditional authority, the traditional leaders, and the politicians as well. And also, which is not so good, is the issue of the fact that we're working with mostly the managerial leaders. The leadership is on a contract basis, appointment on a 5-year contract basis. And every 5 years, you may or may not meet a new person if you've been there long enough. So the importance of having to document whatever you're doing is very critical. And the issue of these MOUs is what is assisting us, because the MOU that we've got, it was in 2013. It's now almost 10 years from now, almost 10 years. And some people in there don't even know that we've got an MOU, but because it's documented, we may have to review it. But because it's documented and you mention this MOU, they go back and see that, okay, you've got this arrangement with these people, and therefore they begin to listen from that background. So the issue of this short-term contract does have an impact, and we must speak with that in mind, knowing that you have to document whatever you do. I don't know, maybe my colleagues can add.
The other thing that I'd like to add is we kind of, in looking at our strategy, we kind of came at the strategy with us driving it, all right, and working with the with the municipalities and other stakeholders. But what we have found also is that it's important the people who you're trying to work towards getting benefits for are aware of their rights, so that they too can advocate from the ground. And it's really important. It's interesting that COVID kind of sort of made us take a quantum leap in a way. Some of the steps we had planned, we actually jumped them and moved to that place where we actually started doing things and started seeing results and people seeing them. But there's also the fact that in the communities, there are these other local, the governance structures, including political structures in there that are there to represent their people and the stakeholders. And I think it's important that people are aware and know of their rights so that they can also speak into the situation. And as you come in with whatever intervention that you're coming in with the municipality, that they're meeting you halfway. And what we're finding now is that because people are beginning to become more aware, they're actually actively taking charge of some of the things and starting to do them even before, you would have expected them to. So there's a real need to have that awareness that is on the ground, that kind of comes up from the ground as we are trying to come in from the top. I don't know if you want to add to that, Caroline or Tando?
I think also just to say that the process is now building on itself. You know, what is possible has been shown, and as I said, you know, the municipality is starting to initiate its own similar projects, and a lot has been achieved with a more integrated approach, I think. So I think certainly all parties have been willing to learn from each other, and I think that's been it's been a real win for everybody, communities, for CSA, and for the municipality, I think. Thank you.
Really good points. And thank you. You did illuminate several perspectives that weren't in the report, especially that point of like, you might go in driving the strategy, but don't underestimate the value of having others join you, especially if it's, you know, their rights and participation. And Tando, it's amazing to hear a natural resource professional talk about how empathy, patience, and trust are key tools in your toolbox. And, you know, Caroline, that like building on and, you know, you start with the plan, but you work with it, really important. I just want to bring a question that Wilton put in the chat. And he said, it's interesting that politics seem to be quite similar in trend. How did you move around to convince the political actors? Because Tando, you said you talked about working with the contract professionals or those guys who are more rooted, but there's also the political actors. Can you share a little bit about your experience?
Okay, yeah, I think ours was it's I would say it's one of those opportunities that just present themselves. The political leaders that we work with, especially the one who's in charge of the specific department in the municipality, he is a pro-environment person. He is a staunch supporter of the environment management that we work with. He's based in Matatiele, and before that, I mean, he is working now for Advenzo district municipality, but he used to be in the Matatiele local municipality. And he was a champion in one of the working with our partners in one of the projects that we're doing in the landscape in Matatiele as we speak. So he happens to be someone who's not just a politician, but he's also in the space. He understands what we do. He understands environmental management issues, not only from a professional perspective, but from a personal perspective. So it was easy on that level because we managed to get in on the specific date, the day before the lockdown, through him, speaking behind the scenes with him, not necessarily behind the scenes, but going directly to him to say, we've got this to present to you. And he used his powers to push his office to invite us to come and present. The meeting was specifically for us not necessarily other meetings involved. So we presented because he is someone who was willing to know formally what we're coming to see and to see him and what exactly we're bringing to him. So also it builds up on the history that we have with the NDM, because not every partner that we have has the same relationship as we do with him. So I think that's our story.
So it sounds like an internal champion sort of helped you navigate sort of some of the political pitfalls you could have found, maybe, or to help you maybe cross those bridges more smoothly, and then also really recognizing that relationship that you've built also kind of not safeguarded you, but helped make you better prepared for navigating that balance between sort of those in the daily functions and then those making sort of more political oriented decisions. Is that fair to say?
That's true, but it's also that not all politicians are the same. Sometimes we always think that the politicians are in a particular band of people, but some do understand that they are there for a reason, because this is all about service delivery. And if you're working in a district, you've got 4 municipalities to deal with, and they all looking up to you. They need water as of yesterday, because that's what you promise them every year. So what we are doing out there is pretty much as important as they are doing, because we provide 24/7 amount. I mean, the water that's available to them day and night. Meanwhile, most of what they have, or where they've been, not most, a fair amount of their project doesn't result in which is why we come from behind and tap into their system and provide water from the springs and tap into the existing system that has been sitting there lying fallow, not working, and people see the results. And for now, we're taking them along to go and present to people, and because now they are putting money into this project, understanding what we're doing. They aren't just doing it because CSA does, but they see the value in what we are doing, because it's mostly in those areas where I would say they're probably never going to be in the next 20 years, because it's areas that have been serviced already, some of them. So they still have a backlog to move forward. Meanwhile, where they've been, the taps are dry. So we come in and try sort of like doing a mop-up of some sort behind them, which is why they see the value in what we're doing. Thank you.
Awesome. It sounds like really, really important work then that's really impacting lives of people who are living in and around the nature that CSA works so hard to protect and work together with communities on. Are there other questions? If there are others, you feel free to sort of use Teams to raise your hand or turn your camera on. It's not all the time that we have this team of experts together, so I don't want to monopolize them. Thank you, Wilton, for that great question.
Colleen, just one thing in the chat, it says the guests may not have access to the chat. I don't know if that's true or not. I think when I got kicked out, maybe something happened. So people may want to unmute to ask a question.
Yeah, if you have questions, please, or you might even be able to raise your hand in Teams. There's a little smiley face with a hand in front. That's another way to let us know. And while you're navigating that, I'll just say I'm going to put the link to the report again in here and remind you that, we're so lucky to be able to have this opportunity to talk with the CSA team, but there's also reflections from the Jane Goodall Institute Uganda's work, looking at a very similar issue, but in an also very different, in a very different landscape with different environmental and health issues. And to just say, as Janet mentioned, today's launch of the lessons learned is the last major deliverable of our task, but that we hope to continue to keep working. I know CSA has their agenda and work that they're going to keep building upon that ABCG has been a part of. and that as we can, we'll try to continue to share information with our LinkedIn group. So if you're not a member of our online community of practice, we try to gather actors who are interested in looking at this intersection in sub-Saharan Africa via a LinkedIn group, and I've just put a link to the to the group in the chat. If the chat is not working, you can't access any of these things, don't worry. We will be sending an email after this webinar to share both the lessons learned report and a link to the LinkedIn group. So with that, it seems that this afternoon or morning, we've got either quiet people or those who are trapped out by technology. But I wanted to give a humongous thank you to the CSA team for joining us and for sharing your experience, and most of all for your hard work that has really made a difference in the lives of folks.
All right. Hello, can I speak?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Yes, I also just want to thank the team that has just been presenting. It's really quite important to get to understand some of the basics and some of the backgrounds, especially when you're dealing with you know, a diversity of people. That's very important. I think, Tando, you're very right to say not all politicians actually are what we label them to be, but probably it depends on what the kind of national politics that you are dealing with. It determines the behavior of our leaders. What I just wanted to know is that you also mentioned the traditional governance, which I'm sure you're talking about the chiefs and all the like. This is a municipality that you're talking about, and do you have those traditional structures actually, you know, being effectively dominant in running the municipalities? Or because in our situation here in Zimbabwe, you know, the traditional chiefs and the like are more based in the rural areas, and rural areas do not have municipalities as such. Thank you.
Colin, can I jump in? Oh, gonna give
Please,
me the opportunity.
the floor is yours.
Yes. Yes. What happens here is that the SALGA, which is South African Local Government, as well as COGTA, which is cooperative governance in the provincial department, they, I think about 5 to 10 years ago, they came up with a strategy of incorporating traditional leadership with political leadership. So if the council sits, you will have traditional leaders also part of the council meetings. So they are now being recognized in council as part of the council, as part of the existing structure. Apart from that, was that we on the ground work directly with traditional leaders, because you find that in these villages, you find that a particular village within the same ward with one councillor, and then you find that a particular village has another traditional leader, and also councillors, they are in charge of administrative area. Meanwhile, traditional leaders are located per village. And the fact that you always have a continuation with traditional leaders because they're always there. Meanwhile, councillors, it's also this 5-year term contract that they have. So it's always easy to work with traditional leaders on the ground as opposed to political leaders. And I think that's my take. So basically, it is a stance that we took in CSA to be more focused on traditional authority than political authority. That is on the ground matters. Although now we do have the issue of ward committees, who all report to the ward councillor, which is a politician. But like I mentioned earlier, the structure is now a more comprehensive structure than it used to be in the past. That's my take here that's what I can give you, our scenario here in South Africa.
Great, thank you, Tando. Mama A or Caroline, would you like to add anything about traditional authorities?
Not
No,
more to what you said. Sorry.
No, I think Tanda's put it very well. So I think in South Africa there is a more integrated approach, and it works. I mean, in the areas where we're working with people that are like people living in communal areas. They're not like areas owned by individuals. So there is a need, if you want to achieve impact on anything, not even just sort of like the freshwater work, but also our other stewardship work and so on and so forth, you kind of need to find a governance structure that's going to hold everything together and help to drive things on the ground. And we don't necessarily have people from the municipality directly involved in some of our activities. So it just helps us to have to look at governance from both ends, literally, and also find ways of integrating it so that you establish those relationships and that understanding that is going to contribute to the overall impact. I think a lot of the things that we do in the communities, we would not be able to do successfully or have the impact that we have if we don't involve the different parties. But you need to know when to involve those parties. When and where and how to involve those parties.
Excellent, thank you. Great, so we are almost at time, and I just want to thank everyone, especially our Conservation South Africa colleagues, for really sharing with us their lessons and their insights. And Tando, this is so great to really get a picture of what you deal with on a day-to-day. So I think it's really exciting for us, and very much in the spirit of ABCG, we're going to be promoting these lessons. We're going to be promoting the advocacy work, and you know, within CI, we're very much committed to the integration of freshwater conservation and WASH through a WASH and watersheds program, and we're hoping to replicate it in other parts of our organization. So we really owe you a big debt of gratitude, and definitely are going to be looking forward to other opportunities to promote this work. We do have, for World Water Week, we have a couple of events that are going to be promoted. And so, Colleen, I'll just give you a last word, maybe, if you want to just say something as we wrap up.
Just a humongous thank you to the CSA team for their great work and for sharing and letting us all learn from your experiences. And if you are not aware that Stockholm World Water Week is actually not taking place in Stockholm, but online and virtual, and there are free registration options available this year. So please join. There'll be 2 different opportunities to learn more in depth about the work that CSA has done, as well as one opportunity to receive some training around this ABCG methodology. And that will be happening on the Wednesday, August 24th, I believe. So get on there, take advantage of free World Water Week, and we hope to meet you again in the virtual space soon.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us. Have a blessed day.
Good to see you.
Thank you.